Hello and welcome to Who Really Cares, the podcast for carers by carers in Bedfordshire. Hello, my name is Nikki. I'm your host and I have the privilege of talking to some fascinating people who are navigating the world of caring. Please like and subscribe to the podcast and share it if you like it with your friends. The feedback I'm getting is fantastic and people are loving it and finding it a really useful resource as well as a comfort as they go through their caring. Today I have a treat because I talked to Tizi. Tizi is a young adult carer and she is also works with me at Carers in Bedfordshire as a young carer support worker. So she is such a wealth of knowledge and experience because she has, since the age of 10, been her carer herself and she now supports young carers. So she's got so much experience and so much wisdom to share. So grab that cup of tea, sit back and enjoy my chat with Tizi. Hi Tizi, thank you for joining me today.
Hello Nikki, thank you for having me.
I should explain we know each other, we actually work together. But we don't actually have a lot to do with each other because, we'll get to that. But you work on the Young Carers team.
Yes, I do.
But what I recently found out is that you're exceptionally qualified for that job because you yourself have been a young carer.
Yes, I have. So from about the age of 10, I've been caring for both my parents who have their physical and mental illnesses.
And so was that something that suddenly happened at 10, or did you just realise that's what you were doing at 10?
So I think it started off more so with my mother with her physical health when I was an infant, really, when I was young. But I think I became a lot more aware of the issues at the age of 10 and it became very serious. And it was virtually overnight that my mother found herself in a predicament where she was in hospital and she was in a coma and it was a life-threatening state. And I basically had to I got home from school one day and got told, okay, you basically have to, learn how to do things because mum isn't going to really be in the house a lot. So
wow, and it's funny because you're smiling about it now, but I can imagine at the time, like you're so young, and it must have been incredibly frightening.
Yeah, it was 100%. And I've got an older sibling who's 4 years older than me, and for him as well, we're both children, so he understood a bit more than I did. But I think I think I was scared because your major fear is losing a parent. But I think I just accepted it and thought, okay, well, I'm actually going to maybe make sure to do things probably too much so that when mum does come home, everything is perfect, as it were, so she doesn't have to do anything.
So did you feel a sudden weight of responsibility, like really suddenly?
Yeah, 100%. So it was literally overnight because, I'd known about the fact that her health had been kind of up and down, but I don't think you think about it until something like that happens, and then you kind of think, oh, okay, this is a lot more serious than I thought.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so at 10, was it just sort of household stuff you were doing, or did you end up having responsibilities like medication and like more serious stuff?
Yeah, so it was household tasks, so putting on the washing, helping my kind of dad when he was at home from work, washing, helping with the dinner, um, ironing as well. One of my mum's friends came over to help me learn to iron.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
yeah, and then obviously it was the emotional, I think, responsibility as well because um, obviously my dad was trying to parent me and my brother whilst also working full time. So it was basically looking after my dad and brother as well and making sure that they were okay. And then, when my mum did eventually come home, it was kind of reminding her to take her medication, explaining to her which ones to take when. helping her sort them out into the kind of jars that you have for the
Yeah.
week. So yeah, it was quite a lot
Yeah.
when I think about it, really.
And so did that carry on then? Because you mentioned you care for your dad as well. So did that come a bit later then?
Yeah, so uh, when I was about 12, 13, my dad he'd always had kind of mental health issues had always kind of been a factor in his, um, I would say, like family history.
Okay.
And when I was 12, he basically had got diagnosed with being severely depressed and also as bipolar.
Right.
So he then got let off from job, so was home a lot, and that was very hard because it was still my mum was still not 100%, but then she also took on the role of we all did of looking after my dad. Um,
So that must have been really difficult. I'm
mm,
just trying to put myself in your shoes, and it must have been really difficult to take that on because there's something when somebody's physically got something that they need taken care of. That's one thing, and that's kind of more
mm,
comprehensible as a child.
mm,
But when
mm.
it's a mental thing, it must be so much harder to understand. I think, I mean, obviously, as a grown up, we're all much more aware of our mental health, but for children, that's quite hard.
It is, yeah. And I remember getting told by you know, obviously children are not necessarily involved in the medical side of their parents' care.
Mm,
I certainly wasn't. I had to kind of be told by my mum, look, this is what's going on with your dad. Don't be upset if his mood changes very quickly because that is what happens
mm,
when someone has bipolar. And I remember, even though I knew that it wasn't him that was it wasn't him being deliberately kind of really depressed or really angry. It still hurt, and I think when you're a child,
yeah,
you just see them as your parent. So I couldn't distinguish the two apart. I couldn't say, oh, this is dad on a good day, this is dad on a bad day.
yeah,
Um, so it was kind of all. It got to a point where you thought, oh, does he really not like me? Is that why he's in a mood? Have I made him upset?
yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah,
so yeah, I think trying to understand that it's not anybody's fault. It just is the
yeah.
situation that someone's in.
Yeah,
It's
but you're
very hard.
saying that, yeah, you're saying that as an adult now. So you
Yeah.
can you understand that now, but at 12, 13,
No, you didn't.
that's, yeah, it must have been so hard, Tizzy.
It
That's
was quite
amazing.
hard.
And did you have any help then? Were you like were you registered with Carers in Bedfordshire or anything like that to
I
support you?
I actually wasn't, and I think I didn't even know about it because had I and had my family have known, I do think uh, the amount of difference it would have made to a young carer, to me in that situation when I was younger, even now. You know, I think a lot of the information we receive does come from schools, and I think, to my knowledge, my schools never, it was never a thing. Like they
Mm,
never, no one ever mentioned it. It was very, there was never any kind of signposting for support services. It was very sort of, oh, you can talk to the pastoral team or the school
yeah.
counsellor, that's it. But there was never any specialist support.
So did any of your teachers know that you had responsibilities at home?
They did, they only knew once my kind of mum was out and she was better and she was able to kind of tell the school, um, if she appears a little bit kind of off in class, this is why. Um,
Right.
but again, I don't necessarily think they were very receptible to it. It
Right.
certainly didn't. I still had to kind of, give all the work in on time. I still had to kind of, get a detention if I didn't hand the work in on time. So there wasn't really much room for kind of understanding, I think,
Mm.
when I was at school.
And so when did you actually figure out that you were a carer?
I think it was when I would talk to my friends, and obviously we were so young, so you want to meet up with your friends and go to town and go shopping and all of this. And I think the sheer kind of, they would be able to just do it on a
Mm,
whim, whereas for me, I would have to, if I did want to go out, I would have to plan it, and I would have to make sure that
yeah,
either my brother was going to be home, or that my mum was okay that day and she didn't need me, or so
yeah.
I couldn't just decide, oh, I want to go out today. um
Yeah, you didn't have that spontaneity that your friends
no,
had.
so everything had to be planned. And I think I remember going to my friends' houses and thinking, oh wow, like they get to just, chill and be a kid. And I was thinking, like, I don't, not that I don't get that, because of course I did get that, and I did get time to be a child, but not as much. And I was like, wow, I was surprised, because I thought it was normal, like what I was doing was my normal. So
Yeah.
I didn't think anything of it at
Yeah,
all.
well, I think that's with like as we've learnt working with carers is that they all say that I was just doing what I was doing. You don't even
Hmm.
think about it.
Hmm.
But when you do step away from it and realize what your responsibilities are, it's like wow, I really do more than most people.
Yeah, you do. And I think it's certainly, I think a lot of the time when you are caring for someone, you don't see it as this, medal of honor. You don't see it as being this great thing. It is just your life and your daily routine. And
Mm,
it doesn't kind of matter how you got there. That is your situation, and that you kind of have to just make the best out of what can sometimes be a really challenging
mm.
situation.
And you
Really,
still live at home, don't you?
yes,
Yeah,
I'm still living at home.
yeah. So you're still caring,
Yeah,
even though you're in work.
yeah.
So how was your caring day yesterday? Something I always ask.
Yeah, so yesterday, I had to leave work a little bit early, because I had to take my dad to a doctor's appointment, because, yeah, he had an appointment and my mum was at work, so she couldn't go with him, so I had to go with him.
Mm,
So yeah, it's just making sure that everybody's okay. And I think the older I've gotten, um, the more I've kind of come to understand that there are certain things that they can do for themselves. So my caring role
mm,
definitely has reduced, but there are still things that are not going to change, like supporting my kind of, father with his mental health. That's not going to change. That will
no.
remain. And the same with my mum. She does still have bouts where she does end up in hospital unexpectedly. So um, yeah, it's just knowing that you kind of are, I think, always on alert. I'm always kind
Mm,
of waiting for the next, oh, you've got to come and help me with this, or you've got to leave work to come to
yeah.
this appointment. So
Do
yeah,
you does that feel like a burden to you, or do you like? I always think that do you feel like you can't have freedom in your life still because of this?
I think I think not it. I wouldn't necessarily think it as a burden, but I think I do sometimes have days where I do feel like I'm scared to leave. I'm scared to live my own life fully,
Yeah,
because what does that mean for them if
yeah.
I'm not
That's
if I'm not there?
That's what I mean, like that feel when I said burden, I just meant like how a lot of people your age will be like, "Oh, maybe I should move out of home, maybe I could do
Mhm.
this or maybe I
Mhm.
could go traveling or whatever."
Yeah.
They're all thinking that. Do
Yeah.
you feel like there's always this thing in the back of your mind where I couldn't really do that?
Yeah. There is, and obviously I do, um intend on one day, when I have enough money saved, of moving out. But there is always that nagging thought. And I went to university a few years ago, and even the decision of going to university was a massive one,
Mm,
because I chose to only go to a more local university, which was only about 45 minutes away, purely out of the fear that if something happens, I'm not going to be there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So even though you sort of flew the nest, you only allowed yourself so far.
yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of that was, because my parents are very supportive and they were like, go, go, you know.
Mm.
But I think it was me and my defenses. I was a bit like, no, I don't really
Yeah.
feel comfortable with just leaving them. So
Yeah. And do you think you would be more out there and if your parents were, self-sufficient and you didn't have ever had any caring?
100%. Yeah,
Mm.
I think I would have had a little bit less worry when it comes to them, because a lot of the time it's not for myself, it's I worry for them. So,
Yeah.
I think had I not have had that, I wouldn't have necessarily been um I don't know where I would have been, but I do
No.
think I probably would have been a lot more confident, and probably would have left a lot earlier, uh,
Mm.
to be
It's
honest.
interesting that you mentioned confidence because
Yeah.
do you think in some ways that your confidence has been dampened down because of your worry?
I think so, yeah. I think it certainly makes you um, a little bit more aware of kind of everything. And I think my downfall is that I'm probably a bit too worried sometimes. So I'll kind of
Mm.
assume, because I have seen how bad it can get, there is always that in the back of your head. So I think,
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So because you don't have that carefree thing that 20-year-olds have and
yeah,
fearlessness
yeah,
because
no,
you've been fearful, and
yeah,
you've lived through
exactly.
fear and you
Yeah,
know all about it.
yeah,
Yeah, that's so interesting. But then, I mean, there's another way of looking at that, though, is that you have survived all these things that other people
yeah,
haven't survived.
yeah,
You've been
exactly.
more resilient than most people, which should, I don't know. I mean, if you look at it that way, that could build your confidence, maybe.
Yeah, 100%. I think, over the years, I think I've definitely um, become more confident, especially about kind of my abilities to care for
Mm.
help my parents. But I think when you're young, especially when you're a child, you often, whether it's from medical professionals or from just other adults, you are often seen as a child, which I think when you're a young carer and you are mentally mature, you're kind
Mm.
of very aware. It feels a little bit patronizing to kind of almost be left out of these kind of medical decisions. And
Ah.
I remember one moment very vividly where the doctor kind of was talking to my dad, and he noticed that I was near the door, and he was like, do you want to go and, make sure your daughter is out the room when I kind of tell you this? And I just remember that entire time feeling so angry and really like, well,
Mm.
you don't know my situation. Like, I I can take it, sort of thing. Like, just I want to know.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, yeah, it's obviously delivering information to a child has to be done sensitively, and when it is kind of quite a, you know difficult topic to deal with,
Mm.
like, you're potentially talking about something um, like death to a child. It is very
Mm.
hard, and I think, but that did really annoy me, and I think that was the first time I really felt like, what, just because I'm a child, you're not going to assume I understand what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a
So that was
difficult
annoying.
one. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
difficult one, but I mean, I can see it from his perspective.
Oh yeah, a
I've
hundred
got this
percent.
horrible thing to say, but
No, 100
but
percent.
I do think that young carers, particularly, they kind of deserve a little bit more of respect in those situations because
Mm,
of what they are aware of, and
yeah,
actually, the not knowing would be way worse
yeah,
than having to hear something difficult.
yeah, a hundred
But
percent. Yeah, I agree.
difficult, difficult situation. But I
Mm,
can understand, your anger in that situation as well. Because,
yeah, I
yeah.
did. I felt a little bit like, well, I've seen it all, sort of thing. So there's not like, at that
Mm.
point, I think I was kind of like, there's nothing you're gonna say to me that I haven't already kind of thought about in my own head.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, obviously looking at it now, there is a reason why that he chose not to tell me. But you know,
But
yeah,
I
that's
think,
just one example, I
yeah,
think.
and I think, in terms of professionals, I think
Mm,
there's, we're always talking about professionals trying to be more carer aware and,
yeah,
and recognizing a caring responsibility within a situation and all those sorts of things. And that's
yeah,
also very applicable to the children around the situation who might
yeah,
be young carers.
yeah,
And I think that professionals perhaps do need to have a bit more training in that regard. Like, if there is a child in the room who has caring responsibilities, how do I communicate with that child? Or
yeah,
what do I say to the cared for person in regards to that child? And all of those things are such important conversations. And, I think I can totally see this doctor is dealing with the patient. He's not
yeah,
dealing with the other people in the room, but
yeah,
actually he should be aware. And, it's an important thing, because whatever he does in that moment will have an impact on your mental health and your
yeah,
future. And, you don't want to be there as a patient in future because of something that happened to you when you were a young carer. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I
you
think
know,
it's
they're
all,
they're all valid conversations. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%.
yeah, and it's really interesting with you because obviously you went through all of that experience as a child and as
Yeah,
a school age child, and
yeah,
then you now work with carers,
hmm,
which I find interesting because obviously a lot of carers who care full time or transition from young carers to whose education might have been impacted and they don't feel as qualified and all
hmm,
these things we hear this all the time. Um, but you found a role that kind of draws on all your experience,
yeah.
which I think is really inspirational. So, can you talk a bit about that, like the experience you've had as a young carer now informing your role as a young carer support worker?
Yeah, I think obviously educational experience is invaluable, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to understanding, especially a young carer's life, lived experience is probably the best knowledge you will ever have. Because
Mm,
when I kind of go and do school visits with these children, some of which, are as young as 4, you sit there and you do truly understand them because you were in their position. And I
yeah.
think they feel comfortable telling you because they have this sense that you do understand them.
Mm,
Um, and I think it's nice to be able to provide young carers with the type of support that would have benefited me and my brother when we were younger. So I think I'm sort of, in a way, it allows me to kind of go forward knowing these children are supported,
mm,
which is really nice knowing that, you know, when I was their age, I didn't have that. And I think it makes you a little bit more kind of motivated to kind of fight for the young carers and fight for their
mm,
futures, sort of thing, because it is important. And
yeah.
they
What I was just going to say that your lived experience is, yeah, that can't be taught. So
no,
when you're sitting in front of a young person, your ability to do your job is going to be way better than anybody who hasn't been through. I mean, no disrespect to your colleagues
no,
who
no,
might not have been young carers, but I do think it's just such a good asset for you
yeah.
to have in your life and in your career.
Yeah, I think one of the loveliest things is that when I go and talk to children and talk to the young carers, it's about them. It's not about me. So I won't ever mention the fact that I was a young carer.
Mm,
But if I see that the child's maybe a little bit, maybe doesn't see themselves as what they're doing is something kind of good and they should be proud of themselves, I will sort of say, I know it's really hard, but you can do it, sort of thing. And then I'll mention to them, I used to be like you. And that's, I
mm,
think, when they go, oh, were you? And they're shocked, I think,
mm,
because I think it's hard to comprehend other people are in your position,
mm.
especially when you're a kid. Which is why I think the young carer events where they get to meet other young carers is so, it's priceless. I think, because
Mm,
it makes you feel not alone. It makes you feel less isolated, and
mm.
makes you feel a little bit kind of special in a way of, oh, I get to go to something that my friend might not be able to go to. It sort of
Yeah.
gives them a little bit of a, um, bragging rights sort of thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
And payback because they will have missed out on other things that their friend went to and they couldn't go to. But the
exactly.
other
Yeah,
thing I think is that young carers say sometimes is that it's just so nice to realize that you're not alone and that there's other people. Because
yeah,
especially, because like you said, when you're that young, it's just your normal. So you don't
yeah,
even know. And in your own story, it was only when you went to somebody else's house, like when you were older, then you went, "Oh my gosh, they live so differently to me."
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and that's I can totally get that because obviously when you're young, you just accept this is life. This is my life.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think you don't necessarily see, not that there's another part, but yeah, that you can be a child and not feel guilty about being a child, sort of thing.
Yeah,
Because I think I would guilt is one of the things that even now I think lives on. Because even when I go out with my friends for one evening or go away for the weekend, I do find myself thinking, oh, I wonder how mum and dad are. Oh, I wonder how mum. And it's this kind of,
really.
yeah, it is
And so
this.
you use the word guilt. So there's actually like guilt of you're living your life and you probably
Yeah,
shouldn't be.
yeah. I feel a little bit sort of like, oh, yeah, like you don't want to kind of leave them because they're maybe in the same position they were for whatever reason, and you're maybe not because you're older and you're, you know, like things are different now. So there is always that little
Yeah,
nagging feeling at the back of your head.
yeah.
But
And how do
you
you
know,
deal with that then? What do you do? Do you
I
put it in a box and go out anyway, or what do you do?
I'll sometimes talk to them about how I'm feeling, and a lot of
Mm,
the time that they're so, you know, I love them so much. They're so supportive. They're literally like, stop thinking like that. Like we don't. They want me to go, and
yeah,
like they're very kind of, um, they just will allow me to kind of live my life, and I'll tell them, and they'll say, yeah, I think getting that reassurance is really nice because it's like it makes you feel a little bit like, okay, it's
mm,
kind of, sometimes I think it's in your own head that you sort of make a problem bigger than it is,
yeah,
but the reality isn't like that.
yeah.
um
I mean, I think there's also something you probably have to be aware of is that when we talk about it with former carers, that once their caring role has finished and they become bereaved, um, that they lose their whole. They don't only lose their loved one; they lose their whole way of life because they have been caring for a chunk of their life.
mm,
And when that goes, they lose their whole sense of self and all of these
mhm.
sorts of things. But it's almost similar in your situation because you have to let it go in some respects. You have
Yeah,
to go, okay, guys, like you mentioned it before, you've realized there's some things that they can do and you need to let them go. And there is because there might be some attraction just to hold on a little bit
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's where your safe place is. That's what you've always
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
Mm.
it I think yeah, you're completely right. I think even though someone who's never had a caring role might look at it and say, oh gosh, that seems like a really stressful situation, or which it is, but I feel like it's almost like, is the grass greener? Like, your situation here is maybe not the best, but at least you're aware of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas it's like you said, like going off, and it's almost like not having this responsibility for someone else, and it's then
Mm.
like, okay, well, what do I do with that? Because
Yeah.
you've got almost like a sense of purpose if I'm helping someone, whereas if I don't
Mm.
have that anymore,
What am I
it
going to
is
do
it's
with?
very
Yeah.
difficult. Yeah, you think, well, what am I going to do? What
Yeah. And who am
um
I? Because I've
well,
been there.
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
exactly.
and so that it's interesting because I was thinking earlier just today about young adult carers and how I guess you're a young adult carer. You're still in that
Yeah,
age band, yeah.
yeah,
So but I traditionally in our statistics and whatever, we lose a lot of young adult carers. So there's that dip in, they stop being a young carer, they're not quite an adult carer, and the numbers go down. They don't engage with us as much. And I've always thought, oh well, that's because they go away, they move to university or blah blah blah. But there might also be another reason, and that is because they need the breakaway, because they need to grow. They need to, they need to go and find themselves and not to find themselves as carers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think especially if for whatever reason they were a young carer and then, their caring role stopped because they no longer had a cared for potentially.
Yeah.
I think being reminded of that even into their, youth and their kind of early adulthood, for some of them it may kind of not allow them to kind of grow.
Yeah.
If they are constantly reminded of something that they used to do.
Yeah.
But I think it is definitely really difficult for the young adult demographic to remain engaged. And I think for whatever reason, maybe they are just off living their lives and,
Yeah, maybe. I also think, maybe they are, but I think that whatever's happened is that their caring role has changed.
Yeah.
And so I think they probably might be caring remotely now, or they might have moved away, they might have got a job, they might not have as much responsibility. But it's still, I think they probably still should engage because there's still support available, and they should access it as and when, even if it's just to talk to somebody, or I don't know. I mean, I guess that's why we're here, because then people can or can't as they want.
Yeah, 100%. I think
Yeah.
even sometimes having a conversation with, someone who might not necessarily be in your situation, but having a conversation with someone who understands
Yeah.
is I think invaluable. And sometimes talking to a stranger is the best release you'll ever
Yeah.
get, because they're not that, they can't judge you, they don't know you.
Yeah.
And I think
That's right.
sometimes that's all you need really, is to
Yeah.
kind of let it out in
Yeah.
some form of way, whether that's a conversation or through art or through meditation or exercise. It's just having these outlets, because it is very stressful, and
Yeah.
caring for someone, oftentimes you do put yourself second, because there is
Yeah. That's the
there isn't
nature.
another choice.
It's the
So
nature of the job, isn't it?
yeah.
But I mean, you're fortunate because you work for a very understanding employer.
Yeah, 100%.
For your caring responsibilities. But that's the other thing that young adult carers might not know, is that we can help with employment support. If you work for somebody who isn't as understanding, then we can help with that. And also with university, I think there's been instances where some universities aren't as understanding of missing lectures or things, or because you've got caring responsibilities, and we can advocate for you.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
can we can help you, advise you, but we can also write letters and whatever, and maybe help you. So these are all good things to remember that we do.
Yeah.
Now, I always ask these 3 questions. I've already asked one of them, which was how were your caring role yesterday, which you answered. The other one is there anything you can think of that you would have liked to have known right at the start when you were 10 years old?
I think I would have liked to have known that there is support out there, and it shouldn't be that hard to kind of find out about it. And I think in my eyes, school for me was a massive, not a letdown, but school was definitely where I think I should have heard about it from, and I
Right.
didn't. So, but also just knowing that it is difficult, and it doesn't necessarily get easier per se, but you will learn how to manage, and you
Yeah.
will live your life. Because I think
Yeah.
when you're young, you think, oh gosh, is this going to be it forever?
Yeah.
And it can feel very limiting, in a sense of, well,
Mm.
why should I bother going for that job, or why should I bother going to uni when in a sense I'm a bit trapped.
Yeah.
But yeah, just knowing that it will be a journey and it won't be easy, but you kind of, you will be okay. I think
Yeah. Oh,
you
that's
will,
nice.
and there's always
And it will
support.
change. It will change. Yeah. Everything
100%.
changes. You have to
Yeah,
embrace change.
yeah.
And what is there? What, if anything, if you were in charge, what would you of everything of the world? What what would you put in place, or is there something that you would do to make like you people like you or your life better right now?
I think just honestly, obviously I'm biased because I work for carers in Bedfordshire, but investing in more charities, helping charities that are doing the legwork, because let's be realistic, um, local authorities, yes, okay, great, but when they're putting in 10% and local charities like Carers in Bed are putting in about 90% of the work, we need more support, because
Mm,
the work we do can't be done just off of local authority kind of contracts alone. It has to be funding. So I
mm.
think, yeah,
More
just
funding.
basically more funding. Like,
So you can do your work and more of it because you are
yeah,
going out in schools and you are trying to, you're trying to find that 10-year-old girl who was just like you who doesn't
yeah,
know.
exactly. And I
And
think hopefully, if it was a thing to have more national services, so it's everybody can access it, and it's not
mm,
just yes for some, no for some, depending on your postcode sort of thing. I
yeah,
think it should just be everybody, wherever you are, whoever you are.
mm,
If you're in this situation, you should be able to get the same level of help
yeah.
across the board or across the country, sort of thing.
Yeah,
So
because it is very segmented, isn't it? And it does
100%,
depend on your postcode
it does.
at the
Yeah.
moment, which is heartbreaking when people call and you're like, I can't help you just because, and that's, yeah, that is hard.
Hmm.
Great. Well, all valid responses. Tizzy, thank you so much for chatting
Thank
to me
you.
today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank
You've
you for
got,
having me.
oh no, it's a pleasure. Uh, you've got so much to teach the young carers, I think. I just think you're such an invaluable resource within our organisation. And I'm sure your family think that you're an invaluable resource as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
You're widely loved and adored for
uh,
everything that you do.
yeah, no, it is lovely, and as I say, it's for kind of anybody who might be listening who might resonate not just with me but even with some of the other um lovely people who you've had on the
Mm,
podcast. I think it's important to remind them that even if it feels like they're not doing a good job, they
mm,
are. And I think
yeah.
you're entitled to support the way you support others. So I think,
Mm.
yeah, just letting everyone know that they're trying their best, and that's all you can ever do, really.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's all we're all trying to do at the end of the day,
Exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Tizzy.
Thank
I
you.
will see you back at the
Yes, I will do.
office.
Yes. Take care.
So you can tell that Tizi is such a lovely young person and is now in we're so fortunate to have her at Carers in Bedfordshire because she can bring the experience that she's gained through her young life and is now supporting young carers herself. So we've really, really valued Tizi and it was such a joy to speak to her. And I loved getting to know her better. I think she's a great person. So I hope you enjoyed that. Once again, please do like and subscribe to the podcast if you liked it. Share it with your friends who may be carers or even anybody in your workplace that may be a carer. And it's just nice to hear from other people. People always say to us that it gives them confidence and comfort when they listen to other people going through a similar situation or somebody who has tips and advice for them. So definitely share the podcast with them. I really appreciate it. Next episode, we are talking to a fabulous lady, so get ready for that one. And make sure you've caught up with all the other episodes as well. I'm enjoying producing them for you, so do make sure you've listened to all of them. In the meantime, I'm your host, Nikki. I look forward to seeing you next time on Who Really Cares.